College football had something interesting happen this past weekend when they started to select out the 12 teams who are going to play in the college football championship. Now, you should have realized that this was going to happen at some point, but here's the situation. I want to break this down and talk about two things specifically. But first, let me give you a little disclaimer. I am a University of Miami alumnus, so I do have a little bit of a bias, but I'm going to try and set that aside when I talk about what's going on here. So the first situation has to do with how they select the teams and the fact that there are 12 teams selected from a field of about 125 or so. And these 125 don't play each other, obviously. And you have conferences, and the conferences have tie-ins, and they're supposed to get some selections made that go into the championship. You have some teams that play outside of their conference because they're trying to get a more marquee matchup and make more money within the season. You have some teams that just play the weak sisters and try to get to 12-0. You have some teams that are better than others within the not Power 4 conferences that will play each other, and one of them may turn out to be a really good team, at least in that conference, but it remains to be seen if they're good against the bigger schools. So you have an inherent problem of how do you select any teams out of there? And then you also have the problem of these championships that you have for each of the conferences. The championships, some of them work out okay, some of them don't. I'm looking at you, the ACC. When you have a 7-5 Duke that can play for a championship when there are several 10-2 teams out there, it doesn't make sense. So then the whole thing gets thrown into a little bit of chaos. And then you have the independent Notre Dame who schedules their own games and does their own thing and has a different way of looking at it. Now, the reality is that as you look down the roster and you realize that the teams that don't make the playoffs, those teams will play in other bowl games. The bowl games are an old, archaic sort of notion for teams to finish the season. Half of the teams that make a bowl game finish with a win. The other half don't. So it's kind of an exciting thing, or was back in the old days. And when they used to select a champion from the bowl games, it was sort of the eye test. You know, they'd look at two teams that were ranked highly and try to figure out which one was better based on which one they thought did better in their bowl game. And that made sense, sort of, at the time. And now, today, with the money and the fact that you have a championship, this doesn't really play out. And what happens is some players will opt out so that they could raise their draft stock a little bit. Rather than playing and potentially getting injured, they're just going to sit it out. And now you're seeing entire teams that are deciding not to play either. I'm looking at you, Notre Dame, because they decided that it's not worth it for them to play in a bowl game because they want to play for the championship. That's where things get crazy, because what do you do about the bowls in that case? If nobody's going to play in them, nobody wants to play in them, the boosters still love them because their team still has a chance to win at the end of the season, and you feel good about it. They're feel-good bowls, right? So what do you do about that? And check out my second point tomorrow.